Hey everybody, Dave Bristello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Grow Your Firm podcast. Today we have a returning guest, it's Shauna the Tax Goddess. In our first episode, we talked about really building this brand, building tax advisory services, what it looked like, how she priced them, time-saving methodologies. We even got into sales team, how she works within the sales team. And we didn't have time to talk about building out the team. Building out this great team that Shauna has developed at the firm and how she finds them, what's the recruiting process, what's the hiring process, the onboarding process, how do you manage things around security and team integration, and so much more. But first, I just want to say, Shauna, welcome back to the show.
Aw, thanks so much for having me, David. It was so much fun last time. I just couldn't wait to come see you.
Yeah, well, I saw that on actually LinkedIn. It felt like it was a new thing, or at least we didn't have time to talk about it last time, which is, I see here, and look, for everybody listening, we're going to dig into the teams. I know that's a hot topic today, but it says top 1% of tax strategists in the USA. How did you get that? What does it take to get that? I'm just curious. What does this mean, and how did you get there?
Where did it even come from? I love it. So as with most CPAs, so I'm a CPA, Master's in Tax, Certified Tax Coach, Certified Tax Strategist, right? So a bunch of letters after my name. Now, where that came from, marketing is definitely how my brain thinks. Okay, let's come back to this, but it is technically right. So I'll cover both perspectives. So marketing. First thing I did was I went to Google and I said, how many CPAs are there in the US? We got a number. Google said 660,000 in the entire US. Okay. The next number is, well, great. How many have masters in taxation? Only 60,000 apparently have masters in taxation. There are only 607 that are certified tax coaches and 15 that are certified tax strategists. So from a purely marketing standpoint, it's actually 0.902 that I'm ranked as far as specifically tax strategists. But the organization out of California, which actually educates and certifies both CTC, which is Certified Tax Coach, and CTS, Certified Tax Strategist, also ranks us. And so the last time they sent me an email, they said, listen, we're not telling you which one you are, but we can tell you that you're in the top 3 of everyone in our organization. And so even if I go with that, the top 3 of 660,000 CPAs gets to the top 1% easy. So a lot of this for your listeners out there, because I know we've got lots of CPAs that are listening today, EAs, everything else, a lot of it is the spin that you put on what it is that you have. Don't forget that your knowledge and all of your history and all of your training is worth a lot to the world out there. You can save people billions of dollars. So make sure they know it in your marketing.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And it's interesting how you deconstructed it. You work numerically backwards to identify top 1% from what you already have in motion at the firm and the certificates you have. Makes perfect sense. Well, to transition into this sometimes more emotional, less numeric world of people, and to set the stage though, before we dive into the kind of the journey they go on from kind of recruit to new hire to fully onboarded, tell me a little bit about the current team construction, how many folks are there, and then maybe a high level org chart of what people are doing.
Absolutely. So at this point, Tax Goddess has 89 people on staff around the globe. We're in 20 different countries. And our company is broken down into 13 different divisions at this point. So some of the divisions are what we call billable. So things like tax, payroll, bookkeeping, tax strategy, IRS notices, sales tax, kind of the actual work side, the work product side. And then we also have teams that are supporting teams. So we actually have our own tech, in-house tech, HR, customer service, administrative. We also have a programming department, an automations department. So we've got across everyone, we've got about 13 different divisions. And within each of the divisions, I have what we call a department head. And the head of the department, the HOD, head of the department, their job is to make sure that as an owner, when they come to me, we have a weekly HOD meeting. And when they come to the weekly HOD meeting, they are informing me, the owner, what's happening in the company, what are the problems coming down the road, what are the things that need to be changed, what's happening in 3 months, are there good things we need to celebrate, those kinds of things. so that I, as the owner, can be looking that 3, 5, 10 years out in the future in the vision to see, well, what should we be doing? So for example, right now, I'm spending a lot of time looking into all of this AI stuff. What do we need to be doing? How do we change our processes? How would this AI improve what we're currently doing for our clients?
Got it. And in a high level, what's the pie chart of headcount? How many folks are in billable percentage wise, and how many folks are in supporting?
I'd say about half and half at this point. So definitely we get a lot of flack for this. I'll be very honest with you, right? Ever since the very first day I started my firm, almost 20 years ago now, I have always had more administrative staff than I did billable staff. Always. And many people looked at that and said, well, no, you should have one admin to 3 billable people. Admin do a lot for us. And I think that admin title sometimes gets looked down on. But the way that I've always looked at building the firm is I want my billable people doing nothing but. If they're tax people, they do nothing but taxes. I don't want them making phone calls to follow up on documents. I don't want them sending emails to go check with somebody. I don't want them scheduling appointments. That is a complete waste of their time, in my opinion, right? I'm a firm believer of the $10 an hour job, $100 an hour job, and $1,000 an hour job theory, right? Which basically says if you're a tax preparer, your $1,000 an hour job is to prepare taxes, not hunt down files that your client hasn't sent you. So I've always been more to a 1-to-1 kind of ratio between my supporting teams and my billable team, because that way the people and everybody gets to do what they're really, really good at, right? My customer service people are amazing on the phone, and they have this like black swan skill set where they can pull data out of clients, where a tax preparer generally hates being on the phone. They'd rather be doing taxes. So.
And I do want to dig into then how you think about admin and the spectrum of what they can take on relative to maybe how they're typically viewed. Absolutely. But the thing I want to pull out from the first episode we did together is that, you have much higher margins because of how you structure both your pricing and how you outsource work.
Absolutely.
Right? So you have that extra support built in to your margins, it seems like.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, you've got 2 real things that help with margin here. The first one kind of goes back to where we started this conversation, which is make sure that your marketing and sales tie into what you can actually offer people. So for a long time, and I know the industry's changed over the past 7+ years, right? For a long time, CPAs billed by the hour, right? My hourly rate is $200 an hour or whatever that is, right? Problem is, of course, you're worth $200 an hour, but the knowledge you have in your head and the performance that you provide to your clients is worth so much more than $200 an hour. So the first side there, of course, is billing, right? What should you be billing? Are you value billing or hourly billing? So that helps with margins. But of course, having an overseas team is a huge difference. Way back when, about 10 years ago, when we went all digital, before that, I had a local physical firm. Everybody was from my city. Everybody came to the office every day. And I remember very clearly my senior tax reviewer decided to retire. And me trying to replace him at the time, it was $85 an hour W-2. And I had raised my wage to $120 an hour W-2. And I still couldn't find the skills that I wanted. I mean, how do you make profit? There's no way, right? And I realize everybody needs to be paid. But when you realize some of the skill sets that you can get in the rest of the globe, not only do you make profit, but you can also give much more benefit to your people. So instead of just giving a wage and the company barely surviving, next year in 2024, I'm actually taking my entire company to Thailand for a week. So there's a lot of really cool things and benefits and options and bonuses and all these things that I can do for my team because we actually have profit to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And then B, I love the concept of being able to find interesting ways to kind of take some of that margin and make sure you're developing, company relationship and trust through kind of offsites and fun places.
And education. Side note, right? A lot of CPA firms, I'm ex-KPMG. I remember if you were spending too much time on education, that was looked negatively because, of course, that wasn't billing for the firm. Here, I can tell my people, no, go take a week, go do your CPA or chartered accountant's exam. Like go do what you need to do. Here's free education provided by the company. I'm actually raising and growing my own team who are now loyal and will stay with me forever, right? Because no one else ever did that for them. So
Yeah. Well, and by extension of that, well, how do you think about, you mentioned the admin hire, and you think about it, I think, much more either holistically or broadly in terms of what they can do. So I guess help me understand, what's the typical view of admin, and then how do you view it differently?
absolutely. So for a lot of people, they call an admin, oh, well, this is like the $10 an hour jobs that like, well, they can do this because it's simple and it's easy. Okay. We look at admin completely the other direction. Their job is to bring their skill set up to everything that is not the billable job. So for example, I've got admin who are using AI, creating systems to improve the speed and the efficiency of tax assembly. I've got admin who are doing research projects on how are we going to use this type of marketing AI to increase our SEO rankings, right? I mean, it's literally any job other than the specialty for that particular person. And so when we look at what an admin role is, when a new admin gets hired inside tax status, the very first thing we tell them is your job will never be boring, ever, because you will be told, here's a problem. Go figure it out. We think you're smart. Otherwise, we wouldn't have hired you. Go figure it out. Pull the research, call in other teams if you need resources, whatever it is, and bring us back your best resolution or whatever the issue is. So for a lot of people being hired, it's also a really fascinating place to work because they get the freedom to figure it out, right? Whereas in a lot of places, an admin is, no, here are the 6 things and you're going to do them over and over and over again every single day. So.
Yeah, which then is like maybe a good segue into then hiring. And I think for this role in particular, an admin. So, I think the classic maybe profile people think about for admin is they're obviously in a supportive role. They're very detailed focused. They will catch the typos. They were very organized, good at project management. But you also think about admin in a much more expansive way. And I'm painting with a broad brush here, but sometimes people that are like hyper creative problem solvers are at odds with the detailed, organized project managers. And so with the potential range of things they might be responsible for, how do you vet somebody at the admin level then?
Absolutely. So I'm smiling because you're absolutely correct. In any role, admin, tax, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the highly detailed people, then you're going to get the creative people, and you're going to get the high drive people that like push things to be finished. You're going to get the really strong people in communications and people. So yeah, super broad. We actually use DISC if you can't tell by the way I'm describing it, but we use DISC for all of our staff members to understand where they are. We also use it in the hiring process. So it's one of the things, I think this is a big difference. Our current, just the strict administrative team is 12 people. Okay. So I think there's a big difference between hiring your very first admin and another person for a 12-person group. Right. So when you're hiring your very first admin, my suggestion would be look at what you're strong at and find somebody that's effectively opposite from you. Because if you're really strong at the details and at people, but you're terrible at collections, for example, find somebody who can do that, right? Find the opposite of you. But when you have a larger group, I would say once you've hit about 4 or 5 administrative staff, you really want a broad variety of skills within the same team. Because then they can support each other, right? You can have one person extremely good at details and one person extremely good at communication. And together they can work on whatever project, depending on what needs to be done. So
you mentioned DISC in the interviewing process. Have you found other tools or things that you've built in your interview process that will help you vet candidates?
I'm going to give you my favorite one. I'm so sorry for anybody who is going to be an interviewee of anyone who listens to this podcast right now. Okay. So my favorite, my absolute favorite. Okay. So we have a hiring process, of course, right? I have HR people and they do the first interview and they just kind of check, are you good? Are you detailed? Like, what are we looking for? Whatever, right? When that person reaches me for an interview, if they reach me for an interview in that process, okay, my interview is not an interview. My interview, I get on the phone, on Zoom, whatever it is, and I say, great, what questions do you have for me? And I sit quietly. and they either freak out. I've had one guy hang up on me. Oh my God, I didn't know this was the thing. And like hung up. I'm like, great, you can't handle stress. Problem solved. Right. Done. Right. I love using that as an interview technique because what it shows me is how do people handle under stress? We're tax CPAs, right? It's stressful. There's always something going on. There's always a deadline. So how are people under stress? How fast can they think on their feet? Right. And do they get angry or do they get happy? Right. It tends to be one or two of the paths. So if they get angry, this isn't what I was expecting. Rah, rah. But great. We don't really want you as a part of our team. Right. Because if you're stressed and angry, and that's not good. However, if you're like, oh, this is a really cool, I like this. Okay, let's figure it out. What do I know? You are now happy. You're a problem solver. You're communicative. Like, I'm in. Let's go. Right.
It's so funny you bring that up. We're going through a season of interviews, and usually when I'm pulled in, I leave. So I'm not as maybe adventurous as you are. I don't have the whole interview start that way. So we've got an hour interview. Half the interview, I'll pepper them with questions, and there's some things I'm trying to pull out for, a scorecard or what have you. And then the last 30 minutes, I will say, so what questions do you have for me? And I always find it pretty interesting and amazing when people are like, I don't really have any. I'm like, this
is like your future life.
Yeah, this is like a third of your waking hours every Monday through Friday.
Yep.
Nothing you don't have, or they pull a, really random question and, it's just so painful.
Yep.
And then you have other people, that will say, all right, well, let me see. Let me pull up like somebody said to me recently, okay, let me pull up my list. I go,
perfect. I like it. Checkbox. I love it. Yeah.
How cool is that? And, it's amazing how kind of telling I feel like that is, because people that literally have no questions, I've never been employed really. I've been, contractor and hourly, but I've never had a kind of a W-2 prior to Jetpack. But I always thought it was bizarre to show up and just be like, no, like, so you just don't care? Or you're not interested? Or like,
I do think that there's two very distinct groups of people, right? And this is in general, this is across all of life, in my opinion. You have the W-2 people and you have the entrepreneurial people, right? Just in my mind. So tell me what you think about my theory here. So the W-2 people, nope, I'm showing up for a job. That's fine. I'm here to do my thing, 8 to 5. I get my job done. And they're great. We need W-2 people. Don't get me wrong, right? But I tend to prefer to work with the entrepreneurial people. I don't know. Let me figure it out. Let's see what kind of problems I can solve. What other options do I have, right? For me and for what I built, I love that. But for a lot of people, they show up at 8, leave at 5, do what you're told to do, right? So I do think that in that interview process, it really depends again on who you are. And knowing who you are is so important to being able to hire the right person for you, for your company, for your culture. Because if you're not the entrepreneurial type, which is fine, right? You don't want somebody in your organization who's going to be asking questions and bucking the norm, right? You want somebody, oh, here's the process and we're going to follow it in 8 to 5 and here's my steps. Okay. So anyway, what do you think? I don't know.
Yeah, I've got two quick things. So I heard somebody articulate this as, there's a difference between, and I'm going to butcher what she said, but it's kind of like, do you need somebody to build the thing or you need somebody to manage the thing? And so often we hire managers to build something.
Yeah.
We hire builders to manage and they put a wrecking ball through the whole thing. And so I think it's interesting, to use that as a tool. I would say as it relates to like W-2 versus entrepreneurial, I guess, and I'm not trying to have a cop-out answer here. I'm kind of like, a bit in the middle in that I feel like when people show up with questions, it just shows a level of maturity and professionalism.
Absolutely.
And it also makes me believe that they just A, want it more, and B, are probably more competitive in the marketplace. So it actually, like, the more questions they ask, the more interested I am in the candidate, because I'm like, if they are this caring and they haven't started yet, imagine what happens once they come in and they want to absorb more information. That's pretty exciting. And I think for firms, I mean, even questions like, how has the firm changed over the last couple of years? Where do you see the firm going? What are some challenges you've had recently that you've overcome? How do you identify yourself as a leader? You can come up with half a dozen questions. Any candidate can do that. To me, I'm typing like it's an immediate disqualification, but I will say it does look,
It leans.
yeah, it definitely leans. And I will say for people that have showed up with essentially no questions, I don't remember ever hiring one of those candidates.
Me neither.
So I love that as a technique. Always
Absolutely.
what questions do you have for me? And if it's nothing, and I go, oh goodness, especially if you're a small firm, which is,
Yeah.
I don't think it should be hired at any level, but if you're a 500 person firm, there's maybe more room for error, but for 10 person firm, 20 person firm, I mean, this is 10% of your staff. This is 5% of your staff. And they're coming in and they're not, trying to help build up the firm or have an ownership mindset in the firm. It's tough. So I love that as a technique. To zoom back out, so you asked that question, you use DISC. I am curious, there's been a huge challenge in terms of building a pipeline. When you go out and hire, do you find some of these marketplace websites useful? Do you use a recruiter? Do you have your own methods? How have you been able to vet and find great candidates at the top of the funnel?
That's a great question. So, like I said, when we started, we were like 15, 20 people. One of the very first things we did was hire an HR expert, right? A full cycle HR, because we knew our goal was to get to about 250 on staff, right? So we knew that we were planning for growth. Okay. So that was what we did.
Yeah. I'm just curious then, what did you see in the tea leaves that said, okay, I'm willing to make this investment now, or was the investment not as heavy because you found ways to find great talent overseas? Because at 10-20, I feel like she'd be kind of nervous, right? They would have to believe in the growth or, something else.
So I definitely believe in growth. I know myself from that standpoint. There is as you mentioned, I guess I was a W-2 for all of the span of about 2 years before I said, right? I don't know about that. So, but yeah, no, I'm a grower, 100%, right? And for me, what I looked at was, what is the life that I want to have, right? Do I personally want to be the person doing tax reviews or inputting data? No, right? That's not the skill that I'm good at. And so what I learned for me was I had to get the skills around me that were the things that I didn't like to do, wasn't any good at doing, thought I was good at, but I was actually awful at, which was hiring, these kinds of things, right? So I went and hunted down experts. And what ends up happening with that is once you have that team of experts that you're happy with, the clients see that. So they're referring and they're growing. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy from that standpoint, right? If you bring a good team, the clients will see it, they will be happy, and you'll get more business. It's pretty clear. So
from a HR perspective, if you recall, what roughly did that investment look like to bring somebody on at that level to help build an end-to-end recruiting, vetting, onboarding system?
Absolutely. So I'm going to come at that from two different directions. So that was right at the beginning of when we started looking overseas. Okay. So again, we've got a big difference between the US costs and the overseas costs. If we're looking at my overseas costs to hire somebody, big, powerful, strong, they know all the things, creating systems, overseas, it was about $42,000 for the year. So yes, that was an expense, of course, but that one person has taken us from 20 people. She hired one more HR along the way. We're now at 89 people. We're in the process of hiring 2 more HR. So, for me, it paid off in spades.
And what was your hiring growth path? Were you hiring 1 a month, 4 a month, like after?
Oh, no. No. So let's see. That's a good point. No. So there was 1 year we hired almost 60 people in 1 year, right? I mean, huge spikes of growth. Now, of course, you hire, you terminate, right? But the general trend goes up. I mean, I think over my career of 20 years, I've hired and fired over 1,000 people. So it's a lot, right? I mean, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of hiring and it's a lot of expense. You had mentioned that earlier, so what is the kind of overall cost of doing expansion to that level? Every single person that we hire overseas, doesn't matter, costs about $16,000 between actually bringing them on, background checks, credit checks, private investigators, this, that, whatever for all the security stuff. And then of course, all the training, because every time you bring on a new person, training, and more training, right? So yeah, so I think the biggest thing is if you're looking to hire, if you're looking to expand, think about really a few major points. So the first one is who on your team is the expert that is going to vet the people you're hiring, right? And what is their method? What is their pattern? Make sure you agree with it, right? So that's a big one. You do need money. You have to have money to be able to hire because it's very expensive to be able to bring on and train. We look at our new staff, you're not even really useful for the first 3 months. And they know it and we know it. And right, it's just a lot of training and a lot of education to bring them up to speed for our speed, right? Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just making sure you need to have the rest of your team involved. So for example, if I have an HOD in tech, they are on the interview because my HR person doesn't know anything about tech, right? So they need to be, it's like a second interview level. So it really needs to be more of a team effort rather than just, okay, you're the HR person, you go hire us people, right? So.
And that's interesting to think about, somebody owning it is that full process and bringing stakeholders in as necessary. In terms of attracting quality candidates, have you found anything, atypical or non-obvious for finding the diamonds in the rough? Or has it been a lot of like in the trench, LinkedIn message, one-to-one? Like, do you have any interesting Zen learnings about how to attract or find good talent?
Well, I was about to say, if this was 2 years ago, my answer would have been 100% remote work, 100% of the time. You never have to come to an office, which even still, we're now hearing people saying you have to come back to office and people are literally quitting. No, it's not happening.
Is that a web? Are you saying remote work as a benefit or is there a website?
As a benefit. Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. As a benefit. Yeah. We put it on every ad everywhere. We do. I mean, how do we attract talent?
Well, where do you...
Sorry, say it again.
Well, I'm wondering, where do you post?
I was just about to say, and I'm so sorry, because I will get you a list of actual places from our HR department for you. I think there's 2 major pieces here, right? There's passive posting and then there's active recruiting, right? So passive posting is fine, but don't expect you're going to get anyone. People right now have so many, and I'm talking global, have so many offers on the table. The passive recruiting, the likelihood you're going to find somebody, I don't know, I'd say 10%. Like really, at the moment, we have something, I think it's like 49 job postings open. And we only actively recruit for the top 5 every week. So our team actually actively goes into the Upworks and whatever. Yeah, I think they've got like 2 Filipino platforms and, they're kind of global platforms for these things. And I will get a list for you, David. I'm so sorry. I don't know those names, but I'll get a list for you.
I mean, even Upwork is something that you still find great talent from. Like
Absolutely. Yeah. Upwork is one of the biggest platforms, right? So we do go back. This is a very good point. It really, in my mind, is this your very first hire? Is this your first out of 10 hires? Upwork is the place to start. 100%, right? If you've never done this before, you only have 1 or 2 overseas, Upwork, 100% Upwork, right? But after you pass that 10-person mark, Upwork doesn't start to make a lot of sense. There's a lot of fees. There's a lot of negatives to Upwork. But if you're only hiring 3, 4, 5, 10, Upwork is fine. So yeah, I would absolutely suggest starting with Upwork. Their system is great that you can see all the history of the person, of the work person. Who did they work for? What were their ratings? Upwork is a really good platform for that.
And look, Shauna, I feel like we're going to have so many more interviews together. We've already blown through 30 minutes together. If somebody wants to reach out, say thank you, follow your work, follow you online, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Oh, you're so sweet. I would say taxgoddess.com or taxgoddessinternational.com. Those are the 2 main websites for us. And thank you, David. As usual, this is way too much fun.
Yeah. And for folks that couldn't jot down all the ideas, thoughts, URLs, frameworks that Shauna talked about, it'll all be summarized and linked up at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. That's jetpackworkflow.com/blog. If you enjoyed this interview, leave a 5-star review. It helps us get the word out. And if you really loved it, if Shauna mentioned something that really was a light bulb moment for you, maybe it was that question, maybe it was using Disc, maybe it was Upwork, maybe it was something else, share it with a fellow firm owner that needed to hear it. I know that's the best way to say thank you to Shauna for coming on the show. And Shauna, thanks again for coming back on.
Thanks for having me.